Wait a minute. This isn't my world. Disappointed!
Alright, what is going on, everybody? Cabana Greg here, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 most disappointing games of 2017. Now, I just released my 10 best games of the year list, so if you want to watch that, I'll leave a link below to that video, or I'll throw up one of the iCards and you can click on that. But this list today is going to be focused on 5 games that I found to be the most disappointing of the year for one reason or another, whether it be technical issues, or story issues, or a combination of the two, or even games that started out really promising and then just slowly fell apart by the end. Whatever the case may be, this list is only focused on games that I found to be incredibly disappointing for me personally.
It's a crash! The entire world economy is destroyed!
Without further ado, let's get right into the list, starting with number 5.
So number 5, we have Neo. Yes, I know. You must be thinking to yourself, how could Neo be on the most disappointing list? It was one of the best reviewed games this year. You're crazy. I'm not watching your video. This is stupid. And you know what I have to say to that? Well, fine. I don't need this anyway. I'm taking my dog, and we're out of here. All joking aside, Neo, yes, in my opinion, I thought it was a big disappointment. I'm a huge fan of the Souls games, so I was very excited to play Neo, and when it finally came out, I thought it was amazing. That is, for the first few hours or so. See, the unfortunate thing about Neo is that it has such a great start, and it's like really fun, really exciting. The mechanics are interesting, and they're easy to pick up and start playing with, but they're very hard to master. But once you do, it's very rewarding and very gratifying. The problem with Neo is that it had such a great beginning, and the first 3 worlds in particular I thought had excellent side activities, really fun story missions. The real issue with Neo is that by the time you get to the 4th, and more specifically the 5th level, or the 5th island, shit just becomes so frustrating and so boring and so uninteresting. The developers, for some reason, just started making each and every encounter like horde mode. They would just keep throwing these enemies at you non-stop. They just keep throwing these mini-bosses at you over and over again that they were fun to play against the first time. When the developers task you to just keep fighting the same mini-bosses 8, 9, 10, 12, 50,000 times, it just becomes so repetitive and so tedious and not fun at all. It's unfortunate because I really did love this game and I was going to put it on my top 10 list for the year. So that's why Neo is at my number 5. It's not any higher. I don't think it deserves to be any higher. It is just sad because it had such great promise in the beginning and it had such great mechanics, and I was so on board for the game in general, but it just took a crazy left turn and the game just became very monotonous and very uninteresting and just needlessly tedious, I guess is the best way to put it. So that's why it's on my list. That's why it's number 5. Trust me, it pains me more than anything to put this game on my list. Okay, so at the number 4, we have Ukulele. So Ukulele was designed to be kind of a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie. And when I found out that that was going to be the case, I was so excited to play this game. I love Banjo-Kazooie and the old school platforming games. The biggest issue is that the Ukulele kept a lot of the bad bits of classic platforming games and really didn't refine anything. This is by far one of the biggest disappointments for me this year, just being a platforming fan. I mean, I've been watching this game slowly get crowdfunded and then eventually have trailers and teasers, and I was so excited for this game. It looked like a fantastic retro game and a successor to the old school platformers. And rather than taking an old concept and giving it some new life with some modern game mechanics and game mechanic ideas, Ukulele just took the concept too far of being this old school nostalgic platformer. The game felt like it was just from another era. It just felt like it should have come out years and years ago. The controls were really clunky. The camera was incredibly frustrating and annoying to fight with, and that was the key thing. I was fighting with the camera in this game. That's never fun. The camera's supposed to be there. You're not supposed to ever think about the camera as a secondary thing. In Ukulele, you're constantly fighting with the camera. Not to mention, some of the worlds in this game look great and others just don't feel that inspired. And to make matters worse, the worlds feel super large and empty in certain sections. So you're just kind of walking around these huge worlds being like, okay, this is whatever. So unfortunately, these are the reasons why Ukulele is at my number 4. I really wish it didn't come to this, but Ukulele was a big disappointment for me. From the level design to the camera and the controls, it just felt like this game should have come out years ago and shouldn't have been released for a modern audience. Okay, number 3, we have Shadow of War. So yeah, this game, I really dug the open world aspects of it, and I liked the story for the most part. I will say that the game is kind of a slow build in the sense that the beginning is not that awesome, but by the time you get around to the middle of the game, the third act of the game, things really get interesting. But the biggest issue for me with Shadow of War, and it seems like a lot of people had issues with this, were the microtransactions that were just kind of shoved in your face at every single turn you made. I mean, it was just downright insulting how these microtransactions were forced onto us, and it made no sense for a single player open world RPG-ish game to have these microtransactions. It just made no sense. But then you look and you realize that's how they're making the microtransactions work for this game, is that they're giving you orcs. That's right, you are basically paying to get orcs. Are you kidding me? You pay more to get a better army faster and conquer the next fortress quicker, and it's not fun. And I don't understand why they would think that this would be fun in the first place. The sad reality of Shadow of War comes down to the publisher just meddling and ruining the overall feel of progression in the game by forcing you to buy microtransactions and ruining essentially the end game and late game because they just want you to speed your progression along by buying loot boxes. I didn't appreciate that, and I also didn't appreciate the slow build in the beginning. While I think that Shadow of War looks good and definitely isn't mechanically broken, it just is a disappointment to see something as dumb as microtransactions be in a single player focused RPG open world game when they really shouldn't be there in the first place. Yeah, okay, so number 2, obviously Battlefront 2, load of crap. I played the beta and I wasn't really impressed. I actually didn't find it that much more enjoyable than the first Battlefront, so I wasn't really getting much from the sequel. The one thing that I did notice when I was playing the beta were the star cards and the star card system and how you're supposed to essentially level up your star cards and they give you increased stats. Even from the beta, I was just rolling my eyes and being like, I hope this isn't actually a thing they decide to implement in the full game. And sure enough, they fucking did. And it's terrible. So yes, Star Wars Battlefront, without a doubt, is not only the year's most controversial game, and it's also one of the most disappointing games this year. Star Wars Battlefront 2 could have been great if it weren't for the monetization scheme at the heart of its design. You know, EA and DICE crafted a beautiful shooter as to be expected, but it's so frustrating to play thanks to these dumb loot crates and the dumb upgrading system where you're basically paying for better skills and abilities. And yes, EA turned off the paid microtransactions within the game, but even beyond this fundamental game-breaking issue, I still find these new Battlefront games to be disappointing from a gameplay perspective. They're prettier than the original games, but they're just not as good as the originals. I just don't appreciate being tempted to pay extra for a randomized loot box that gives competitive advantages in a multiplayer game that I just spent $60 on. Honestly though, If nothing else, I just wish that DICE had taken everything great about its Battlefield games and just given them a Star Wars makeover. That would have been a game worth playing, but Battlefront 2 is not. And unfortunately, at number 1, we have Mass Effect Andromeda. So in retrospect, it should have been a warning sign for me that in the months leading up to this game's release, I kept forgetting that it was coming out in the first place. I mean, this was going to be a new Mass Effect game, and I kept forgetting when the hell this thing was going to be released. When it finally came out, this game was a huge letdown. It almost seems like this game was destined to fail from the beginning. Now, Mass Effect Andromeda is a very well-intentioned game with an interesting narrative setup for the most part, but unfortunately it just seemed like it was rushed out the door. It was like EA was just like, okay, get this out the door, let's go, let's make some money, let's get the Mass Effect series back in gear. And that's what makes it so frustrating too, is that when you're someone like EA, it's like, who is this helping? This isn't helping your bottom line. I mean, this game came out and it was a buggy mess. Shortly after its release, there were all these video compilations about these crazy bugs and stupid facial animations that were just downright insulting. Not to mention that the writing and some of the characters just really failed to impress and didn't live up to the original games in any way. So the other Mass Effect games just really cast a shadow over Andromeda and eclipsed the game of any good intentions it might have had. This game just broke my heart. I really wanted this game to be good. And the worst part about all of this game, Mass Effect Andromeda, has ostensibly killed the Mass Effect series. Who knows if we'll get another Mass Effect game after something like this? I doubt it. So unfortunately, that is why Mass Effect Andromeda is my most disappointing game of the year. I really wish it had turned out better, but sometimes things just don't work out like that.